我哋要真普選，就係要民主，要民主就係要一個安身立命嘅香港，唯有咁樣先能夠穩得翻香港嘅未來。謹此陳辭。
停止發言。毛孟靜議員。
The sheer volume of TV and online footage of Hong Kong police brutality, or at least excessive force, have become such a norm these days, such déjà vu. Where is the civilian government of Hong Kong? Oh, when it does come out, people like Carrie Lam, of course, as head of the government, or her deputy, Matthew Cheung, they will be reading from the scripts, saying that everything would need to just blame the protesters, the rioters, they call them. The rioters. Did they ever try to talk with the protesters, especially the young? They never do, really. Of course, Carrie Lam once did try to get in touch with the university student head, the student union heads, but they say, oh, we have to have an open meeting, a public meeting, and Carrie Lam immediately just shut up. That's dereliction of duty. Unusual times we're in, so we need unusual measures. Where are the unusual measures to appease the society, to calm things down? Nothing. Oh, that so-called dialogue session is just some grandstanding on the part of Carrie Lam at that Wan Chai Stadium. She was stuck inside until after midnight because there was plenty of protest going on outside that night. So never mind that. Now, Matthew Cheung was saying, he felt this extreme heartache, and he was so very saddened by all this. This is phony. This is just unreal. He said dialogue's very important. Indeed, only dialogues can at least help solve political problems. But they wouldn't listen, let alone conducting any dialogue. And I wish they would notice the fact that apparently, well, not apparently, according to some very trustworthy opinion polls, the more the violence in Hong Kong, the more sympathy, the more empathy on the part of Hong Kongers vis-à-vis the protesters, especially our young. Do you understand that phenomenon? No, they don't. Of course they don't. Instead, they keep using fear and force to try to crack down on this society, to clamp down on this civilian protest. Fear, massive arrests. We'll nick you back to the police station, hold you for 48 hours at least, and having this charge swimming above your head. This chilling effect, they thought by arresting nearly, 6,000 people, they could scare the young to stay home. You're dreaming. You're really dreaming. Ever since June, Carrie Lam thinks she could just pretend she's still the very tough, strong leader. By pretending to solve problems, what did she do? She tried to put out a fire in this Hong Kong society using a garden hose. A garden hose, thinking that this hellfire would just go away. She was completely wrong, of course. And then subsequently, she thought she could band-aid the problem. Oh, they're not happy. Let's talk about land issues, increasing housing supply, and then we will all be getting happier. It doesn't work, because the wound is still bleeding, and bleeding hard. You don't use a plaster to cover up a wound. Carrie Lam has proved herself to be public enemy number one in Hong Kong. She's the culprit of all this. When outsiders looking at Hong Kong would say, oh, you guys, this Hong Kong is falling apart. Hong Kong is sinking fast, like a little boat. Excuse me, do you mind not chatting behind me? Excuse me. Thank you. Hong Kong is sinking fast, like a boat, thanks to Carrie Lam. She is the ultimate puppet performing on the strings of Beijing. And as a 40-year civil servant, she's very good at saying yes to her boss and just do what she's been told. Where does that leave Hong Kong and Hong Kongers? Now, I have to be very honest. Before she was even elected, or selected, I mean, as the chief executive of Hong Kong, I told Time magazine that I'm very wary about this supposed leader. She's rather like a smiling tiger who can gobble you up, eat you up, and catch you unawares. Just watch out. But I never knew. I suppose no one in Hong Kong could expect she could be as bad as what we are witnessing. She's the culprit who made Hong Kong sink. That's my reply to foreign friends. What did she do? Completely, almost, out of the blue, she made it clear that she would take advantage of some murder crime in Taiwan. And suddenly, she would push ahead something called the China extradition bill. When there was this public furor, she would still persist. Her ignorance and her arrogance have helped Hong Kong into this mess of ours. She pushes ahead this China extradition bill because she thought, one, she's got the backing of Beijing, and two, she's got enough votes from pro-Beijing worms in this legislature. She's counted her votes, and she knew she's got enough for the passage of this extradition bill. And she thought she's all safe. You condemn violence. This legislature, this particular chamber, was trashed on July the 1st. But let's face the fact, and that is, without that bit of trashing, the passage of that China extradition bill would have taken place already. So thanks to our young protesters, our young vandalists, and our young arsonists. But are they all the arsonists and vandalists? The police have admitted that they've been planting officers in the crowds, masquerading as protesters, so that they could do their work better. What work? They've been caught on news footage doing very suspicious acts, including arson. Was there any government clarification on that? They pretend nothing much has happened. And then Carrie Lam would push ahead what's called the anti-mask law under some archaic colonial emergency legislation, which would, it's been enacted basically, would give her unlimited powers in Hong Kong. She can do anything she could. And so we have to take it to the court to see who is being unconstitutional. And at the same time, as we were saying, fear and force. Fear, right? Judicial weapons against the people. Force, the police force, literally. The police in Hong Kong have been performing as though they're just some proxy for the Chinese army, the PLA. Why? Well, it's quite obvious by now that Beijing can't afford to send the army into Hong Kong to conduct a military crackdown on civilian unrest. There's just too much explaining to do in the international community. They couldn't do that. So use the police force. The police force equals the army, and the police force treats Hong Kong people as the enemy. Like we are the enemy, and they could do anything they want. The invasion of our two university campuses are also very suspicious acts on the part of the police force, i.e. the government, i.e. Carrie Lam, i.e. her Beijing boss. You couldn't help this tactic of suddenly declaring war on two universities and force the students mainly to be confined inside, to starve them out, to besiege them, to make sure that they would suffer in there. What's the point? How come you can't talk with them to start with? We can't help feeling the suspicion that this invasion of the two university campuses are aimed at inciting violence yet again. Right ahead of the district council election. The timing is just too perfect. Would that be a dereliction of duty of Carrie Lam? Well, she would need to explain. There's a lot of explaining to do. Mr. Cheung just now did mention the district council election, the results of which made it so clear that Hong Kong people have decided to vote for democracy. We vote for fairness. And it's a vote of no confidence on Carrie Lam. Carrie Lam should be impeached. She must go.